go. Just give it a few minutes, as we always do, just so I can send out the link and give people a chance to join. So just bear with me a second while I share this link. There we go. Alright, cool. We'll just give it a few more minutes for people to join. Just sharing it out now on my social media. And then we'll get started. Hopefully everybody can see that stream alright. No one's got any problems with it. Start by putting that on silent. Alright, cool. Hey Tiff, what's good? How are you? Hope you're well. Looking forward to Christmas now that you got your assignments all finished and complete. I'll give it a few more minutes and then I will start. On the road, okay. You're traveling to see family over Christmas? Is that what you're doing? Yeah, I bet you are. I bet you are. All that work. At least you managed to do it though. That's the main thing, and you got good grades for it, which is good. Alright, cool. So I think cool, family trip. Well, enjoy, and Merry Christmas to everybody. And what time are we on now? Okay, yeah, so I think we're going to start. For those that are tuning in late, feel free to go back on the video, or if you're watching not live, welcome. I hope you enjoy this video. To those that are tuning in live, thanks for tuning in. This is the last knowledge transfer session that I'll be delivering this year. Obviously with Christmas around the corner, 2 days away, and we're actually on Christmas Eve today. No more videos will be getting done, and no more knowledge transfers will be getting done until the new year. I hope you've enjoyed the season or the series of the knowledge transfer videos that I've been delivering this year. I hope they've been informational, and I hope that they've been able to help you along in either your certification studies or in real life, because that's, you know, ultimately why I do this. Moving forward on to next year, you've maybe seen on my Twitter feed, Instagram feed, I'm looking at delivering more advanced labs for everybody that's interested. And in order to do that, I need to pretty much have a beefier system, which is capable of running a lot more things. So I've put a link, it's scrolling at the bottom, and it's in the description of a GoFundMe page that I've set up, just to kind of for those that are really want to support that and support me in actually getting the equipment to actually progress and deliver these advanced labs for next year. Feel free to click on that link and show your support, and I'd appreciate that. But yeah, that's the plan for next year. So anyway, without further ado, let's jump into what I believe is going to be quite an exciting lab today. You probably already guessed by the title, it's to do with ISE, or Cisco Identity Services Engine. And we're going to look at deploying something called monitor mode with Cisco ISE. So that's the main focus of today. So let's jump in. So I've started with an overview of ISE, and it's a very brief overview for those that are not too familiar with ISE. So it's also known as Identity Services Engine. People just call it ISE or ISE, and it's an identity-based network access control and policy enforcement system. So it allows for central. I was just thinking about that policy enforcement system. So it's not actually. So the ISE system is known as the policy decision point, where where the switches or the authenticator, which is known as the switches or wireless controllers, will consult ISE as a radio server to pull down the necessary policies from ISE. So it allows for central control against wired, wireless, and VPN endpoints, and essentially it's a radio server and supports device administration using TACACS Plus from version 2.0, depending on what. I've kind of put that in there because TACACS is not supported before 2.0. So it gives you contextual awareness of who, what, when, where, and how. So the who is the users and the groups, and the what is the sort of device types that these users are connecting with. And then we've got when, which is the time in which these users are connecting. We've got where, so we can figure out the location of where these users are connecting. And then we've got how, so they're connecting via wired, wireless, or VPN. I'll put a few assumptions here, and they're just 3 basic points really. So saying that it's probably going to benefit you more if you have basic knowledge of secure access control using ISE. So a good overview of ISE or a basic overview of ISE is beneficial. Basic knowledge of what different deployment modes can be used. So today we're talking about monitor mode, but there's 2 other modes. So there's low impact mode and there's closed mode. So I haven't put a post. I meant to put a post on my blog about these 3 different modes. However, I've not got around to actually doing this yet. So just no worries if you don't have an idea of what these 3 different modes are. But basically, it's 3 different stage modes. So normally with a deployment, if a customer is unsure of what they've actually got in their network and what's actually connecting to their network, then you'd normally start to deploy a network or a specific area of the network in monitor mode only, which essentially allows devices access to the network without any access controls in place, but it allows us to, using ISE, see the sort of devices that are actually authenticating okay against any policies that might be configured, and also identify devices that are not connecting or that would otherwise be rejected from the network if it was in closed mode or low impact mode. Low impact mode, then we start to look at only specific services being allowed prior to a user or device authenticating onto the network. And then we've got closed mode, which is essentially nothing is allowed on that specific port until the user or device is authenticated onto the network. So that's it. That's just a quick overview. Like I say, hopefully, feel free to check on Cisco Docs or any other relevant websites where you might find information about the 3 different modes: low impact mode, closed mode, monitor mode. By all means, we're going to be focusing on monitor mode today, which essentially is just going to allow the device in my lab access to the network, but we should be able to see the logs on ISE. And then the last one is that you have basic knowledge of AAA configurations. Now, no worries if not. Again, there is a lot you can do with AAA when we speak about ISE and when we speak about network access control. By all means, feel free to have a look. There's different ways of doing this. So we're going to focus on something called IBNS 1.0 configurations today, and we're only going to touch specific configurations. We're not going to touch all. There's a multitude of configurations that you can use, but for the purpose of keeping it simple, we're going to only focus on what we need to actually get this knowledge transfer over the line today. And hopefully next year, I've got a much beefier server. I should be able to deliver a lot more labs on ISE, a lot more advanced labs on ISE as well, for those that are interested. So lab topology, I didn't have time to put one in here, and the reason being is because this is actually running the lab that we're going to do today is actually running virtual and physical. So behind me, I've got a physical ISE server, a 3515 server, which is running as a standalone mode ISE node. And connected to that, then I've got my physical access switches, distribution switches, firewalls, etc. in my DMZ, and I can connect from where I'm sat now. So just to give you a quick overview of my lab really quick, I'll just quickly draw it on here. So this is all connected in my DMZ. Let me just quickly put that up there, so hopefully this works. So this is in my DMZ, so I've pretty much got a FTD firewall on the edge. Then connecting, I have a distribution switch, and then I have an access switch. And connected to that access switch, I have PC that we're going to be using for the access today. And then we have connected or branched off to this distribution switch. We've got this ISE node that's connected here. And we have different VLANs in place. So VLAN 10 is running as, let's say, employee or user. We have VLAN 99, which is running as the management, and we've got a few other VLANs which are not really required for today, so that should be enough. And then we have on this FTD device here, we have DHCP running for VLAN 10. DHCP is running. So the access switch sends the IP helpers, well, it is configured with the IP helper to the FTD, and then the PC down here gets the this PC will get the relevant DHCP address. So that's kind of how it's configured. So I hope that makes sense. So let's just have a quick go back to this presentation. So these are the steps and configurations that we're going to start to look at. There is quite a few. As I said, there's even more than this, but we're not really focusing on every specific today because there is a lot you can do. But in a nutshell, I'll quickly walk through what we're going to do today. So we're going to create a local user in ISE, and that's going to be used to authenticate our user into the network. We're going to add the NAD, or the network access device, to ISE. So in our case, it's going to be the access switch that we're going to add to ISE. We're going to configure a switch management interface. I think this might already be done, but this is so that we can specify which interface is used to send or communicate with ISE. We're going to configure the AAA parameters which are needed for .1x to function and the accounting and authorization configurations. We're going to configure the radius settings for the radius server, which is in our case the ISE system. We're going to do some validation with a few show commands, and then we're going to continue with the radius configurations, and we're going to look at the attributes that are required. So you can see there attributes 6, 8 and 25, and I've put in red there what each one of them is used for. And then we're going to configure the actual switch port that let's say our employee laptop is currently plugged into, and we're going to try and authenticate against ISE and see what happens. We'll run some verification commands, and then we will have I done that twice? Yeah, I've done that. Configure switch port interfaces. Yeah, that shouldn't be there twice. I should have removed that, but that's the same as that. I just copied it over, so no problem. And then what we'll do is we'll look at the settings that need to be configured on the Windows system, or the Windows native supplicant, in order for .1x to work. So that's what we're going to do. Let me quickly flick the screen over. So we have we've got our ISE system running here. This is running ISE 2.4, I believe, and then we have this is a firepower management center. So this is my FMC, which is connected and monitoring my FTD, which is sat in the DMZ in my lab. And then we have, if we roll over to the configuration screen, we have, so if we look at our FTD, you can see that we're running version 6.2.3. So if I show DHCPD bindings, we can see that our client has actually got a DHCP address of 172.16.10.100. Show DHCPD statistics. Statistics. So we can see that we've got one address pool which is for VLAN 10, and we can see the statistics of the DHCP messages that have been sent and received. So yeah, we know our client's got an IP address. It's currently powered. Is it powered on? Yeah, it's powered on. So I should be able to, let me just see if I can quickly connect to it from here. Let's have a look. So yeah, there we can. So I'll just make this bigger for everybody, and hopefully should be able to see. So if we just take a look at this machine, yeah, we can see, hopefully you can see, it's got an IP address of 172.16.10.100, and it's configured with the necessary default gateway, etc. as well. So this is a machine that we're going to be using. Currently it's got full access, so we should be able to, if I click on here, we should be able to browse to Google, etc. So let's just go to, well, let's just try Amazon because it's right there. So yeah, we've got full network access here, but we're going to change that shortly with our configurations. So if we just go back to this, so we'll start with, we'll run through, I'll keep flicking back and forth between this presentation so that we can fully take a look at the steps that we're on and why we're doing it. So we'll start off with creating a local user in ISE. Now this user is going to match the username and password that's configured on that employee machine. So do that first. So we'll flick back here. We'll go to our ISE node, and what we do is we go to administration, identities, and what we're going to do is we're going to create a local user which is local to the ISE database. It's not going to be using Active Directory or anything like that. So you can see here that we have no users currently configured. Let me just maybe zoom this in a little bit so you can see it better. So we have no users currently configured. So what we'll do is we'll click on add, and we'll give this user a name of, what is it configured with? I think it's just my name. We won't do an email address. It's an internal user. In fact, we'll put it as an all join points. No, we won't. In fact, internal user we'll keep it as, because that's for AD, etc. Our password is going to be the one that's configured on the machine. Same again. I'll just give it a name of Network WizKid. You can set over settings further down here. You can give it a user group. So we'll give it a user group of employee, and then we'll click submit. So I'm satisfied with okay, I need to turn that off. There's a setting where we can actually turn this off. Let me just flick between this. User authentication settings. Minimum length. Username, its characters and verse. Password must contain. So I'll take all them off. Save that. Go back to identities, and we'll have to create again. And see if this works now. Internal users, same password. Network WizKid. I'll give it the group of employee. And there we go. So let us create that now. So there is some settings that are set by default that have minimum or a minimum requirement of some different security settings, as you just seen there, but you can change them as an admin, and that's what I've just done there in order to create our user. If we go back to our presentation now that we've created that, all we need to do is we now need to add the network access device to ISE. So this is where we add our access switch to ISE. So if I just go back to this, so our access switch is this bottom one here. We're going to add this to ISE. It's kind of like registering it. So we'll do that now. And there's some configurations that we're going to do then on the switch as well. So if we go to network devices, so administration, network resources, network devices, and we've got no network devices here, but we're going to add one now. So we'll call this our switch name. So our switch name is so it's access -SW1. I'll just give it a description of DMZ access switch 1. And the IP address of this is going to be the VLAN 99 interface. So let's go back over to that because I don't know the IP address. We'll just do short interface VLAN 99. And we have, there we go, so it's 172.16.0.5. I'll copy that in there, and because it's a host it stays as /32. So that's copied in there now. Model, you don't have to fill all this out. It is a Cisco device, so it's going to use that as a device profile. And we can have stage, we can have it as, these are network device groups that I created as part of another lab. So because we're focusing on, I'm not really going to go into all the detail about this today, but we're focusing on just allowing access today for our devices. So I'm going to select monitor mode for that. You don't have to do that if you don't want, and then you can, there's other additional settings that you can configure here. Now we need to configure the radius settings. There we go. So our shared secret, we will give it a shared secret of, let's give it ICE. We'll give it ICE lab, all lowercase. So that's what we'll give it, ICE lab, all lowercase. COA port, which is change of authorization, we won't touch on that today, but that'll stay the same. And all the rest of the settings will stay the same as well. So once we've done that, we'll submit that. So now we've got our access switch added to ICE. So that's that step done. So now we need to configure the switch management interface, which we've just kind of seen that I've already configured it anyway. So that's already done from a previous lab. So we'll leave that as the as it is, VLAN 99 with the IP address, etc. So we'll move on to this one, which is configuring AAA parameters. So we're going to flick over to this now, and we'll configure the parameters. Alright, just bear with me. There we go. So these configurations are configured on the access switch. So we'll start off with AAA new model to enable AAA. And we can do AAA authentication. I'll spell that right. Authentication. Login. Default enable local. So this is just for local login authentication. And we'll do .1x authentication is going to use a group that we call ICE, which when we define that you'll see. So for .1x or 8021x, we're going to use the default method, and we're going to use a, so if we question mark that, you can use a server group. So we're going to use a server group, and we'll call that server group ICE, which is not yet specified. And we'll do for our authorization. Oops, it said in it. Authorization. network default method group again, and we're going to use the same group, which is ISE. And then we need to send our accounting details to ISE as well. So AAA accounting .1x default method group and start, and we're going to specify group as ISE again. Now we'll move on to, let's just flip back to the presentation. So now we'll move on to configuring. We've configured the AAA parameters for .1x, authentication, authorization, and accounting. So what we'll do now is we'll configure the radius settings. So we'll configure our radius server. So we'll do that now, and then we'll do some validation. If we go back over to our CLI, what we need to do now is configure the radius settings. So we'll do radius server, and we'll call it ISE1. We'll give it an address of 172.16.0.254, which is our ISE server. So we'll do that. So I see some questions coming in. I'll answer these questions when we stop for a quick break. So don't worry about that. So we specified the address. In fact, you need to address IPv4. So 172.16.0.254 is the ISE server. Then our authentication port is 1812, and our accounting port is 1813. So if you don't put them, you can specify a port. So you can see here the default ports are set to the old port, so 1645 for authentication, and for accounting 1646. However, we use 1812, and oops, that's for the authentication. Authentication 1812, and accounting port is 1813. Okay. And now we'll create a server group. So normally you create a server group if you have a distributed deployment. So you have to specify the IP addresses of each policy service node. In our case, we have a standalone ISE deployment today, so we only really have one IP address for the radius request to be sent to. However, I'll just create the group. So AAA group. Oops. Gotta get out there. AAA group server radius, and we'll give this ISE. We'll just call it ISE as a group is called ISE, and the specific server that we already specified was ISE1. So if we got another server, we could have it as ISE2, etc. So that's the group created. So what we'll do is we'll put our server in there. So the name of our server that we created up here, so it's ISE1. So we'll put that into this group. Now that's in that group, and now we'll do IP radius source interface is going to use VLAN 99 for the for radius, and then we'll do radius. So we need to set the dead time, dead criteria. Time is going to be 10 seconds, and tries is going to try 3 times. So if we just do show AAA servers, Let's have a look what we've got here. So we've got a host that we specified of 172.16.0.24. It's using authentication port 1812, accounting port 1813. We can see that the state is currently showing as up, and we've got a duration of 88 seconds, and we've had no there's nothing in the statistics because for the authentication or accounting etc, because we've not requested anything yet. So what we'll do is we'll quickly, so if we go back to the presentation, we can see now that we've configured the radius settings. We're now going to just quickly validate, so we just did that show AAA servers. Now what we'll do is we'll test, so you can actually test users against the radius server and see what response you get on the switch. So what we'll do is we'll do that now. So we'll just go back to the switch, and then what we'll do, test AAA group radius, and we'll do, so this is where you specify the username. So we'll do, or you can specify a particular server that you want to test. We've only got one server, so we'll specify just a username. So we'll do hello as a username. We know that that's not a username because we didn't create that in the local database, so it's going to fail it anyway. And then if we question mark, we can see then it's asking us for the password for that user. So we will specify no password, and then we can use the new code. So we can see there that the user's been rejected. So let's test. So that's kind of a good sign actually, that the user's been rejected, because we can see that we've had a response from the radius server. So we know that something's working there. Authentication, display. Yeah, no, that's fine. So if we do show AAA servers, so it's up. So let's just do the same again for the user that we actually created, and then we can take a look on ISE and see if we see anything in the logs. So we created a, in fact we won't do that because I don't want to share that password with you. So we should be able to see the logs anyway on ISE. So let's go over to ISE. And then if we look at operations, radius, and then live logs, we have nothing, in fact. So we might have to actually troubleshoot these configurations. So let's just go back over to this, and let's have a look at these configurations and make sure that there's not any other configurations on there from previous labs that are messing me up. Let's just do a show run. Play group server radius ISE. Yeah, VLAN 99. Yep, that's correct. Correct. $16.05. Let me just double check the settings on the network device. 0.5 172.16 0.5. Okay, so we should have connectivity between that. In fact, I know what we missed. We missed something, I think. Let's go back to this. We didn't specify a radius key. So I've missed that out on my configuration step. So let's try and specify a radius key. So let's go into ISE1. Let's call it T. We're going to here. Give it a key, and our key was, I can't remember, so let's just double check on ISE what we give. So we give it ISE lab all underscore. Let me add that. Alright, cool. So let's now test that again. That's looking different this time. User rejected. And what did we get last time? User rejected as well, but let's see if we can see any difference on our ISE node now. So operations, radius, live logs, and there we go. So that's better. So now that we specified the key, we've now got connectivity between ISE and our authenticator, which is our switch. So we can see that the network device is the access switch. And if we click onto this little like magnifying glass on a piece of paper, so we've got the time and stuff here. We can see that the authentication's failed. We've got an invalid identity. So let's click on here for more details and see what we get. So we can see these are the steps in which the process occurs. So we can see that it's using this standalone policy server, which is our policy server. We can see that the authentication has failed and that the subject was not found in the applicable identity store, meaning that this means that the authentication's failed because our user that we put in to test the user was not found in any identity store, and that's true because we didn't create that. So it gives you some resolution steps here. It tells you our authentication method protocols that we're using. It tells us our network access server IP address, destination port. It was selecting internal users as the identity store. And yeah, all this, and then you've got a final result at the bottom, which is access rejected. So it gives you a lot of detail there. So let's just click off that. So now that we know we've got connectivity with ISE, let's go back to our steps and work on being able to authenticate our employee laptop we've got set on VLAN 10. So what we need to do now is we've done all these steps. Now we move on to continuing with the radius configurations. But before that, let me just quickly stop and answer some questions that you guys might have. So Hamid, thank you for tuning in. Nice to see you again. Anybody study for and pass the CCNA security? Yes, Reese. Thanks for tuning in first of all. I passed the CCNA security exam last April or last March, so over a year ago I passed the CCNA security exam. I believe it's still the same exam version, still using the same blueprint, but don't quote me on that. So yeah, I've passed that. You're looking at books and all would be bad reviews. Any suggestions? So I use the official certification guide, which is okay. but you definitely need to use other books. I used the 31 Days to CCNA Security Exam, I think it was. That was a very good book, very beneficial. And if you're working towards your CCNA security, then I would actually recommend that book, definitely. What else did I use? I used Cisco's digital learning platform online, and it's expensive. I think it's $1,000 or just less, but it gives you pretty much access to all the content you need for your CCNA security exam. And you also get in-depth labs as well, that kind of give you everything you need in order to pass that exam. So it's definitely worth checking out. That was kind of like my go-to, and the 31 Days to the CCNA Security book was my go-to as well. So it's worth checking those two out. Network Bro, thanks for tuning in. Correct. So most of my IE lab is physical. I do have some virtual stuff. So one of the virtual things that I'm running at the minute is the FMC, so the Firepower Management Center, which is operating my FTD. That all this traffic is running through from my DMZ. So I do have some virtual stuff, but quite a lot of it is physical. And because, I mean, to be honest, I looked at the kit list for the CCIE security exam, and there's quite a bit you can virtualize, but there's also quite a bit that you could do with having physical. So I got what I could physical in order to help me. So I hope that helps. No problem, Reese. Anytime. If you need any more information or anything, just reach out to me on Twitter or Instagram or on my website, networkwizkid.co.uk, and I'll try and help you. There might be some content actually on my website that might help towards the CCNA security exam, but I am in the process of maybe walking through the CCNA security blueprint on a video and explaining what is needed step by step, or what books etc can help you. So look out for that coming soon. Okay, cool. So let's jump back into this lab. So we're going to continue with the radius configurations, and looking at the screen, we're on the top. So we're going to start by configuring the radius attributes. So we can see that the attribute 6 will distinguish between whether our supplicant is using 802.1x or MAB, which is MAC authentication bypass. A supplicant, for those that don't know, is the endpoint. That is the endpoint or the device, and it could be it could be any connect, which is a supplicant that is being used, or you could have the Windows native supplicant, etc. Radius attribute 8, it includes the endpoint IP address, so the IP address that's currently assigned to the endpoint, and then we've got attribute 25, which includes the radius class, and this specifies the group that the user belongs to. So in our case, I think it's going to be employee, but we'll double check that later. And then the rest of it is just the sending the vendor specific attribute, or VSAs, for authentication and accounting, and IP device tracking is it needs to be enabled to keep track of the IP addresses that are associated with the endpoints. So without further ado, let's jump back into the CLI. Conf T. So let's start by configuring the VSAs. So we'll do radius server attribute, and we can see we've got many different attributes here. if you question mark it. Quite a few different attributes. So we're going to start by using class 6, so service type attribute. So we'll do 6, and then we can see the command that we're going to use is on for login authentication. So this says that it sends the attribute 6 in an authentication packet. So we'll use that, and we'll do a radius server attribute 8, and we're going to include in access request. So this sends the attribute 8 in an access request packet. And last but not least, we're going to include radius attribute 25, and this sends the access request packet. Include radius server VSA send authentication, and then if we do vendor specific attributes again, we're going to send accounting, IP device tracking. So let's just have a look at that. Yep. Okay, that's cool. So that's done. With this, there is, as I said, for those that have just tuned in, maybe there's a lot more configurations that you can configure for AAA and when you're working with ISE, but we're focusing today on what we need in order to successfully allow our device to authenticate. So that's the radius configurations complete. So if we go back over to our presentation, now we need to actually go down and drill down into the interface level configurations. Now we only have one device on our network that we're testing against today, and this is on I can't remember what port it's on, we can check that after, but this, if you had, let's say, a 48 port switch and 40 ports had devices connected to which you wanted to authenticate, authorize against ISE, then these would need to be configured. If using identity based IBNS 1.0 configurations, these need to be configured on a switch port basis, so each switch would have to have the same configurations. If you're using IBNS 2.0, then it works slightly different. However, that's not really the scope of this video today, so I'm not going to go into the difference between both. However, I do plan on covering that in the future, so it's kind of just worth pointing that out now. So we'll jump to these interface level configurations now. Let's go to our CLI. Just make sure I'm configuring on the right interface. So yeah, it's this interface gigabit 101. So we have a device connected to that at the moment with full access. It's actually gone to sleep at the minute, so I will have to wake it up before we continue with the configurations, but this is on VLAN 10, and as you can see, there's no other configurations currently on there. So we'll just configure the rest. Okay, cool. So let's configure this interface, and I've just remembered that there is some more commands that we need globally in order for .1x to work, so we'll go back and take a look at that after, but what we'll do is we'll continue by configuring the interfaces first. So we'll go into interface gig 101, and we can give it a description of, let's just call it we'll call it data port. Switch port, it's already in access mode, so we don't need to do that. So switch port mode access, it's already in VLAN 10 and port fast enabled, so we could bring up the port straight away. If you had a telephone sat behind your device, you could, and you wanted to authenticate that as well, then we need to specify a VLAN. So let's just do for the purpose of this lab, we'll do switch port voice VLAN 20, which it don't exist, so it's created it, so that's fine. And then because we're using monitor mode, we need to configure the port so that it's open. So it's still going to go to the radio server, but the port is actually open, so there ain't no controls on there really. Authentication open, so here you can see enable or disable access, open access on this port. We do authentication open, and then authentication, there's also, let's have a look here, does it come up? Authentication host mode. So you got different modes for each that you can specify for the ports. Again, I'll just touch on this very high level, but when you're specifying, it's very important when you're configuring each interface. It's definitely important to realize what each one of these do. So multi-authentication mode allows multiple devices from each domain, so let's say data and voice domain, to authenticate. If you specify multi-domain, then it's only going to allow a device from so one device from the data and one device from the voice domain to connect and authenticate. That's all. Multiple hosts, you can have multiple hosts as it says, and single host is single host is just single as well. So that's very high level what they are. So for us, we're going to specify multi-auth. So we'll have multi-auth on. Authentication periodic. So this will enable recurring authentication, and we'll do authentication timer re-authenticate server. So what that does is it allows the server, the ISE server or the radius server, to allow it to specify the re-authentication time. We won't probably we might have a quick look at that today actually, see how that can be done. If not, I'll plan on covering that in another video. So we'll do .1x PAE authenticator. So this enables and this is quite important for exams actually. If you're studying for, well, probably not the CCNA level, if you're studying for CCNP security or CCIE security, this is important. So this specific command enables .1x on the port. And the reason I specified that is because you've got global configurations and you've got port specific configurations, so this specifies it on the port. And then we'll do .1x timeout, so we'll set the timeout value for the transmit period, and that's going to be set to 10. And then we've got authentication, port control, auto. So this allows the server to control, well, it allows .1x to control the port status. So we'll leave that as auto. So .1x system off control. So that enables .1x authentication globally. So now that we've done that, let's go back to our presentation. Where's my presentation? There it is. So we've configured all these settings on the port level now. So let's just do some verification. Let's go back to our CLI. And let's do show.1x all. So we can see that .1x is enabled for gigabit 101, and all our settings here that we've configured here. We can see that it's acting, the port is acting as an authenticator for the endpoint that's connected behind it. So if we do show authentication sessions interface gig 101, we can see that we've got a an order of .1x, mab and web off. And if we do detail, no sessions match. Now this is where I go and I turn the computer back on because it's sleeping, and we'll see what happens. I've just turned that back on, so we should be able to connect to this computer again. So let's just give it a second to come back on. I really need to turn the sleep settings off on it. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's have a look here. You can see that it still looks like it's got internet access. So let's see if we go to our configurations. Let's have another look at the configs. So now we can see that we've got details coming up for the port. So we can see that we've got an IP address. We can see that the status is unauthorized. We can see that we've configured the multi-auth mode. What else can we see? We can see that the method it's trying to use is .1x, but it's stopped. So let's have a look at what we see here. So we can see for our authentication sessions, we can see that we've got gig 101, we've got the MAC address of that device. We can see that the method is NA, and we can see that it's unauthorized. So it's not authorized. So let's have a look and see if we have anything on ISE. So if I refresh this, it doesn't look like we've got anything on there. So if I, yeah, it doesn't look like we've got anything on there. So if I just do following on here, clear authentication sessions, we can see that we've got no authentication. I know we've got that one there. Alright, cool. So that's seems to be the same behavior. So let me just take that back off, and if I just do a go to the presentation screen again. So we've issued the verification commands. We'll ignore the second part of that because we've already done that. So let's just go, as my presentation. So what we need to do for .1x, because it's currently not configured on the computer, which is why we're not seeing anything. We need to actually configure this now on the computer. So we'll do this now. So for that, we need to go to the employee PC. Let me get that back up. There we go. There we go. Okay. Let's configure this now on the employee PC once it's back up on the screen. Alright, cool. So hopefully you can see that. So we just go to services. You need to be an admin. And then we look for something called wired auto configuration. Again, I hope you can see this. I can't zoom in on this section, but you just it's in alphabetical order. So you should just scroll down and find wired auto config. There we go. And you can see it's not running, so we need to actually set this to running. So we just right click and we'll start that. So you can see that it started and now it's running. Need to change that to automatic, in fact. So double click on it and change that to automatic to start up. Apply that, press OK, and we should be done with that. So now let's just minimize that, and now we should see that authentication's failed. So if you look here, we can see that authentication now has failed. And you see that authentication's failed. So let's see if we can actually ping the internet. So we'll try ping Google. We can still ping Google, but authentication's failed. The reason we still have access is because it's not locked down, it's in monitor only mode. So we'll see if let's have a look on ISE. There we go. So we can see now that .1x is trying to work and authentication's failing. We can see the IP address of the device, we can see the network device it's coming from, and we can see the device port. We can see the endpoint's MAC address. So if we click on this for more detail, as we did before, we can see what's happening. So it says that PEEP has failed SSL TLS handshake because the client rejected ISE certificate. So it looks like it's trying to use certificates here. We need to change this, and hopefully we should then get a successful authentication. But we can see that we've got the MAC address of our device. We can see that it's trying to use .1x and it's trying to use PEEP as the authentication protocol. We can see framed means it's .1x. You can see the access device, the interface in which it's coming from, and a lot more details here with the other attributes. We haven't got profiling stuff configured, so we won't be able to see the actual device type. So I plan on doing them. I plan on doing a lot more to do with ISE in a lot of videos. I just want to mainly give you guys a quick overview of how this actually works for those that may have not seen it, or for those that are thinking of doing the CCNP exam, which CCNP security exam, which is 4 exams, and one of those exams focuses particular on ISE and ACS, which is the access control system. So yeah, that's that. So if we continue with our, just fly back over to presentation. So if we continue with this, so we need to enable .1x and set it to PEEP. So let's go back to our employee device. We go to properties, and hopefully you can see that. And then we go to, we can see that we've got another tab come up here. Once you actually enable wired auto config, you'll get this authentication tab. If that's not enabled, you won't have this authentication tab. So we need to enable .1x on the LAN adapter and set it to PEEP. So we can see that PEEP and .1x is enabled. We can remove the validation of server certificate, and that's because we've not enrolled ISE into a PKI. So we'll just our public key infrastructure. So we'll remove this, take that off. So once we've done that, we'll click on the configure, and we'll set this to automatically use. Hopefully you can see all this because it'll be quite small, I think. This basically is saying that we automatically use the Windows login name and password, so that's what we're going to use for that. We're going to go back, so we'll press OK on that, click on additional settings, and we need to make sure that it's set to use computer or user or computer authentication. So we'll do that, press OK, and we'll see if we get any more, see what we get from ISE now. So let's go back over to ISE. And looks like we've got another invalid here, so we'll see what's happening. So subject not found in the applicable identity store. So let's have a look at this. So this is, we need to look at the identity stores within ISE. So let's go to our policy sets. These policies determine what policy is pushed down to the clients. So before we do that, let's have a look on our switch, and we'll do show off session. You can see that it's still unauthenticated. Let's do interface gig 101 detail. So we can see now that .1x is running. So that's because we've configured the Windows supplicant. We're using the Windows native supplicant. We can see that we've got an IP address, and look at the username. Look at our username. So we can see that our status is unauthorized, and it's trying to use the username of the machine. So let's just have a look at the policies first in ISE. Go back. So we've got our authentication policies first, and for those that are aware or maybe not aware, with Radius the authentication authorization works together, whereas TACACs, they are individual packets. So you've got authentication separate, and then authorization separate, and accounting separate. Radius, the authentication and authorization works together. So what ISE is going to do in a Radius request is it's going to check this authentication policy, and then once it's found a match, so we can see that we've got a hit on number 1 here. So it's hitting the default, and it's saying basically, well, it shouldn't be hitting default actually. So it's saying it's going to use all the users in the ID stores. We can take a look at this. Identities, identity source, sequences. Go to identities first. So we've got our user here. Let's go to groups, user identity groups. We've got our employee, which is our user set to that. Identity source sequences. So it's going to use all users ID store. Let's see what's in here. So it's set to use internal users, so that should be fine, because our user is configured internally on the computer. So let's go back to our policy sets. Authentication. Let's have a look at our default. So if the authentication fails, reject. If the user is not found, reject. And if the process fails, reject. So really want it to be hitting, we don't really want it to be hitting the default rule, we want it to be in .1x here. Let's try and set this to, so if it's .1x, and it's wired.1x, then use internal user, which it should be using anyway. We'll change that. Then authorization, if we open up our authorization policies, ignore most of these. What we're looking at is basic authenticated access. So if network authentication is passed, click off that. So if network authentication is passed, and in fact, let me just take a step back a minute. So some people watching this might be a little thrown off by all these policies and what they're doing and how it works, etc. Don't be. It's not that hard once you get your head around it. And again, like I say, I do plan on, this is just a session focusing on how we can actually get these devices to authenticate against ISE in monitor mode. So we will be doing a lot more labs focused around ISE and how it works and the policies, etc., and breaking and fixing stuff. So just kind of go with the flow sort of thing. So this basically says, though, if the authentication is passed, then just permit access, so it gives it access to the network. So I'm just going to save this policy. It might be that I need to log out of that device, actually. So let's go back to our live logs. And let's go to our user. And we'll log off of this. Where's it gone? Oh, so disconnected from the... We'll go back on that. Okay, let me just sign back in to this, and then I need to log out of the actual device itself and not the remote desktop session that I'm connected to. Can see some more questions coming in. Just checking that the device hasn't gone offline. So I can see some more questions coming in. I'll answer them in a minute. Let me just go check on this device and log it out and log it back in. Alright, so it should be coming back on now. I did actually log it out on the other side, so it won't let me log back in. Connect to that. So that seems to be back on. Cancel that. And now you can see it's asking us to sign in, so let's see what happens when we sign in. Has it worked? Let's take a look at ISE. So we're still getting invalid, so that was at 56. Let's have a look at the output on that. It's always good when we get to troubleshoot a little bit. Endpoint contact is subject net pound. EP10 is chat v2. That's fine. I do it to next. So it should be. Let's have a look at the policies now and see what's going on. Authentication policy. Tell you what, let me just make sure that them users is correct. Internal users. Just type that password in again. Okay. So it is the same password, so that's fine. Go back to our operations. Let's take a look at the CLI and see if we can see what's going on. Unauthorized, trying to use this username. So let's just go back to our machine, properties, authentication. So it's using EP. Yep, that looks fine. I'm just verifying all the settings again. Let's see if we can get it to connect. Let's go to our ISE node. Doesn't look to have come through, so let me clear the authentication sessions. Clear off session, show off session. Doom doom doom. Ain't got another one come through on ISE yet. In fact, a good troubleshoot. This might actually be a good troubleshooting test. So let's have a look at if we debug AAA authentication. Terminal monitor, and then if I do clear off sessions, should get some output coming up. Authentication .1x is starting for the client. And nothing. We've got something here coming through now. So authentication's failed. Stopping .1x. So if I just making sure all the settings are correct. Authentication seems to be failing still. Alright, cool. So what I'll do is let's just have a look at the. I need to make sure that the user settings on this manage user. Let's have a look at the users. Okay, that's fine. So I've got mine there. That should be enough. Let's just so let's just make sure that peep is set. Yeah, peep set. 802.1x is enabled. So let me just take that off a minute. So you can see that we've got network access. I'm going to put that back on. Make sure the settings are the same. Disconnect server. Yep, everything looks to be the same. But authentication still fails, so let's have a look at our troubleshooting. Don't seem to be getting anything through from this. That's at 56. That's the peep and shake. Well, identity policy. Looking up using internal ID star. User ID star. The user is not found in the user internal identity star. So let's take a look at the identity star. So we've got our user identity group. I'll use ID star. Let's just go back to our user. In user group employee, internal users, that's fine. User ID star. That's fine. No external IDs, because I took them out. Just got to make sure everything is in place. Use identity groups, employees. Yep, that's in there. Take another look at our policy sets. Default policy set. Authentication. So you can see now that it seems to be hitting the correct one. So if it's .1x wired .1x, then use the internal users. So that's correct. look at our authorization, and it should be let's change this. Add an attribute in there, so let's have a look what attribute we could add. So if now let's do if identity group is internal user, and it's employee. Delete that one, save that. Oops. So if the user identity group equals employee, then we're going to permit access, so let's save that. Go back to our switch. Just flip back to our switch. Straight back to on off, so let's have a look at our live logs. I'll just make sure that these are getting suppressed. In fact, might be a good one to look at. No, that's fine. So if we go to just quickly looking through these settings on this device, because I do other labs with this ISE machine as well, so it's worth just checking that anything might be stopping it. I better go back to that. Okay, so let's have a look at the I don't want to suppress them. Yeah, we'll suppress them, that's fine. Let's save that. We'll go to, so these should hopefully come up now. So if I just quickly clear the authentication session. To our CLI, you can see that it's still failing. And if I go to if I go to, let's have a look at that. Custom attributes. Let me change the screen back so you can see. Make sure the protocols are allowed, so we're allowing PEEP, MS Chat v2. That should be fine. Okay, so that's not default network access, so yep, it's going to hit that. And then MAB use internal. Process fails. Let me just disable all these policies because we don't need them for this lab. Have a look at that. Let's have a look at conditions. In fact, look at results. Default network access. That allows all the protocols that we've already checked, so that's fine. We don't need dictionaries. Authorization profiles. Permit access. So this should just give us access because it's a default rule. So it should just hit that. We are using no downloadable access lists. So if I just go back to our live log, you can see I think it's because it's trying to use the username of the let's see if we can find it, of the machine. TLS access challenge. If we go back to our CLI, let's just do debug. Debug triple. Sorry, down show off sessions. Show off session interface gig 101 detail. That's the username that it's presenting. So what we could do is we could do MAB for the sake of finishing off. So if we took the MAC address of this machine and we added it to our endpoints, well, it's already in there. Edit that. So it's actually profiled it as an HP device. So profiling some of that we'll touch on another time, but it's profiled it that as a HP device. Static group. So we could actually go to our administration, groups, profiled. We can see our device is actually in the profile group, which is good. That's been profiled as an HP device. So we could actually do a policy. So let's go back to our policies. Let's have a look at our policies, and we do profiled. No, we'll just duplicate this one, duplicate above. We'll call this one profiled employee HP device, and we'll change this to profiled. Let's see if there's another group. Profiled. It's just coming back as profiled, so we'll just keep that as profiled for now. Save that. I always do that. Use that. Save that, and let's do a let's see. So that looks like it's trying to use the, I'm gonna have to have a look into this actually, because it still looks like it's trying to use the wrong user. So before I continue, let me just catch up with these questions. Rohan, thanks for tuning in. If you're still tuned in, appreciate you coming in. You could always go back and take a look at the full session anyway, so that's not a problem there. Phase 114, thanks for tuning in. You can find a printout of this, and well, I won't. Well, in fact, you could print it out, but this will be posted on my website after, so it'll be www.networkwizkid.co.uk. The link's at the bottom scrolling on the screen as well, and it'll also be in the description. So you can find it on there, and then you could go through the slides, etc. as well. I'll try to do a detailed post on this because there were some things that were missing in the original presentation that I've displayed today that I'd like to add as well. So hopefully that will help. Richard, thanks for tuning in. Long time. Hope you're well. How's things going? Yeah, it's been a while. Thanks for tuning in. All right, cool. Let's. I don't think there's no more questions. So let me just validate these settings again. I think what I'll do is I'll actually. If I can. Oops, wrong one. Let's see if I can restart this device. And let's see what it gives me. It's going to kick me off, but if we go to the CLI, let's have a look at what's being displayed here. So pick method list default, there's no general database reply. Change state to, so that's the interface coming back up for that device. No sessions exist yet. That device is still rebooting, so we'll just give it a second to reboot, and we'll continue to configure this. And it's still not up. That one X running. Domain authorized. Let's see what that's saying now. Pit method listed, no general D. Let's have a look. So in fact it's worked now. So it looked like I just needed to restart the device because it had obviously the settings configured before I reset it. So we can see that if we scroll up, so we can see that the authorization succeeded. And for the interface, so we could have saved a lot of time actually just by restarting the device, but oh well, it's always good to do a little bit of troubleshooting. So we can see that it's give it the IP address of 172.16.10.100. We can see that the username is Kelvin. We can see that the status is authorized. It's showing that the domain is voice. That's not right. We could take a look at that. But let's take a look at the ISE node. So if we flip back to ISE, we can see now that the profiling it's been authorized under the Cisco IP forms, which is why it's giving voice, I think. So that's not correct. User identity groups, endpoint, HP device. We can see that the identity is Kelvin, so that's my username. And we can see that it's using the ACL. So if we click on this, in fact, we can get all the details that we need, so we can look through. So we can see that authentication succeeded. The endpoint is being profiled as a HP device, and we can see, in fact, it's hitting that profile that we created. So I do need to change that. So in fact, it's because I set up a rule. So if we go to that rule, in fact, let's go to policy sets, default policy. I'm going to authorization, and actually copied this rule, and that's why we didn't change the profile. That's why it's give it the voice. So that's not right. So we need to just permit access here with this rule, because that's the rule that it's hitting. And if we save this, we go back to live logs, and what we'll do is we'll go back to our CLI and we'll clear the authentication session, and we'll see the difference. So let's do, so yeah, you can see that the ACL that is pushed down is just permitting all traffic. Authorization succeeded for .1x. So we'll do clear auth sessions, and then we can see that the authentication succeeded again. So we'll do show auth. I'll just up arrow, it's quicker. There we go, that's better. So we can see now that the port is authorized, my username is correct, Kelvin. I've been given an IP address. I've been putting the data domain now, not the voice domain, which is correct. And we can see that the authentication for .1x is correct. So if we go back to ISE and let's refresh this, so we can see it's different now. Is it that one? Is that the authorization? So that's authentication. So yeah, so we can see that policy setting is the .1x for the authentication, and the authorization policy is the one that we created, which is profiled employee HP devices. Obviously there is other ways we can do the authorization policies, but this is the way we've done it for this because it's been profiled as an HP device, and we just need to demonstrate that the authentication succeeds. We can see that the username given is Kelvin. We've got the endpoint ID, which is a MAC address. We've got the IP address of the endpoint itself. We can see the authentication identity store which is being used, which is the internal users. So this is the local ISE database. The authentication method is .1x. The group is employee profile devices. You can see the port that is coming from. You can see that it's using radius. We can see that authentication is passed. And we can see that a base and a plus license is consumed. Now this is to do with profiling. Again, it's not really the purpose of this session today, so I won't go into it, but that's normally something to look out for, and something it's important if you're using profiling in your authorization rules as well. So yeah, that's displaying monitor mode. So just to kind of recap, even when authorization fails, so in fact we'll test this now. So we've got authorization succeed, so we need to connect back to this device. And we'll see that with authorization success in monitor mode, we are able to access the network even with let's get rid of all this. Even with our authorization, so even if the device doesn't authenticate, we still get network access. So let's just go to google.com. We'll open the command prompt and we'll do ping. So we can still ping. Because we're now authorized, we authenticated onto the network. So if we get rid of this a minute, let me go back to ISE, and if we take out that policy that allows us access, and we go back to authentication failed. So if I that one, if I just disable that one for now, just to demonstrate, and we'll go back to our live logs and quickly flick over to our CLI. And if I do clear off sessions, you can see now that the port is unauthorized, the status is unauthorized. So let's go back over to our client real quick. So we can see now that we've got unauthorized state here, but we should still be able to, in fact let me just change it over, so you can see, sorry, that we've still got an unauthorized state here, but we should still be able to get out to the internet. So we can, there you go, because there's no other controls that are preventing us getting out to the internet. So this is the whole point of monitor only mode, so you can actually see what devices are hitting what policies, what devices are not hitting the policies, and then work from there to if they are devices that, so we can see here now that it's not hitting the correct policies. So we can see it's failing on the authorization because it's hitting the bottom default policy. So that's the whole point really of monitor only mode, as I was saying, so that you can identify issues like this. You can create policies around it so that they work. and then you know, hopefully you manage to capture everything while your company or network is in monitor only mode, and then transition to, you know, maybe a low impact mode or close mode if you are certain that you've got everything in place that you need in order to proceed. So yeah, I hope we did a little bit of troubleshooting there. I hope you guys have enjoyed that. I'll just re-enable this one again. We could, for instance, let's just spend I'll spend 10 more minutes on this. What we could do, we'll go to results, and if you wanted to kind of restrict what we've got access to, so let's say, for instance, we don't want this device to ping Google, so 8.8.8. Let's do first we'll create a downloadable access list. So this is a little bit extra now. I am going to maybe try and put more labs together where we can kind of go through all these settings and see what they do, but I just thought, just for the sake of an extra 5 minutes or so, let's just mess about a little bit. So let's deny ICMP to Google DNS. So we'll do, this is going to be an access list that is pushed to the switch. So let's just I'll write out on the switch first so that we can just copy it over. Deny, so we're going to deny any to no, let's deny in fact, I'll tell you what we'll do. Deny no, we'll just do, yeah, we'll do any. Let's do any. Yeah, that's not being configured. Let's put it in here. And you can check the syntax. So it's actually saying that it's not valid. In access list on deny, argument access list is not valid. Oh, did I not? Let's quickly have a look at that. Where's my screen gone? There we go. Let's just do standard. In fact, let's just do access list. Okay, type today, access list. Deny any. It's not going to let me do that, is it? So let's do deny. We'll do or do we want to do that? In fact, let me, if I go onto this, I could probably just take one from here. So yeah, maybe we don't need to put the duplicate that. Do deny Google. that, and we'll do deny any. Let's see if that syntax works. Okay, so this is wanting wildcard mask. There we go, that's better. So let's do, in our authorization profile, let's create one. Google test, access set, and we're going to do a DACL, and we can see deny Google there, so we'll push that down. Submit that. Let's go to our policy sets, and we will change this to Google test. Save that. Now let's go back to our CLI. Just do show off session, do show off sessions, do clear off sessions. Make sure that policy is active. I've put the policy authorization, yes, it's back on. So now it seems to be failing again. Let's have a look at the live logs. Refresh that and we'll see what we've got going on. So it's in the default policy. Let's just make sure that we have the correct one on. Policy sets, authorization policy. So then it's in the default, which it shouldn't be. And that's another thing in monitor only mode. I mean, you could have it as deny access anyway, because it's in only monitor mode. You can still have access anyway. But let's go back to this device here. Why is that failing now? Let's just diagnose that real quick. Again, this is just a little bit extra, so you know, if you've seen what you wanted to see, then you know, feel free to drop off. But thanks for watching. For those that want to stay on, feel free to stay on. We should be finished shortly. I'm just doing a little bit extra for those that are interested. Let's go back to ISE, HP. That's correct. Go to live logs. And in fact, let me that might be because I signed in remotely, in fact. So let me disconnect from this because I'm actually signed in remotely, and if I go over to the device, let's see what happens. I'll go on to the, let's do clear. So if I just reset this real quick. Let's see what happens. So now now that I've just signed into the device actually by itself, it's actually authentication succeeded, as you can see. So yeah, so we've got authentication succeed there again for that device, so that's good. So if we do show authentication interface gig 101, show authentication gig 101 details. We can see now, so with that access, with that dynamic access list that we created, so we're authorized, we're in the correct domain, and we can see now that we have a dynamic access list, or a DACL, that's being pushed down from ISE, which is the one that we created, called IP denied Google. So let's see what we can do from. I'm gonna have to sign back into it, so hopefully it doesn't put me into an unauthorized state again. Let's just see what happens. Hopefully it stays authorized. I'm connecting to it remotely. We'll see what happens. In fact, it might still actually allow me, but if we, yeah, so it's still going to allow me because the authentication is actually open. So if we go back to, has it put me in a fail state now? Yeah, so it's put me in a fail state. So the reason I found out why it's doing it is because I'm connecting to the employee's desktop over a VDI. So I'm remote connecting to it, and then it's trying to reauthorize, and it's reauthorizing as this username, which is then obviously failing the authorization. But yeah, you've seen the DACL that get pushed down because it's in. So if we do show interface gig 101, show run 101, we can see because we've got authentication open, that's monitor mode. Pretty much, so it's not really going to make a difference with the DACLs, etc. But hopefully we can do a little bit more on DACLs and different modes in the new year. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you found this useful. An insight into ISE and monitor mode, and the fact that in monitor mode you can still have access to the network, even though it's failing to authenticate and authorize on ISE, and that's the whole point of monitor only mode. Then you can create and develop policies around that, or blacklist devices that shouldn't be connecting to the network, etc. So I hope you found that useful. So thanks for those that have stayed with me on this stream. It's been quite a long one actually today, which I knew were going to be quite a long session. But thanks for staying with me. Like I say, I hope you found it useful. The slides will be available shortly on my website, which is in my description and also scrolling across the screen now. So yeah, I'm not going to be doing any more videos until at some point in the new year now. So do look out for those, and please, if you want to show your support, please show that via going to my GoFundMe page. The link scrolling, and it's also in the description. I'd appreciate that. That's going to allow me to bring more advanced labs next year. And maybe distributed deployments on ISE and other Cisco security related technologies. So yeah, if there's no more questions, thank you for watching. Have a good Christmas and a blessed New Year, and thanks for staying with me on this long session today. Wherever you are in the world, have a good evening, afternoon, morning. Yeah, thanks for watching.